Jessica Frost-Ballas here with a new Crafty Quintet video for Simon Says Stamp. Each month I'll be sharing 5 of something crafty. Today I'm sharing my 5 favorite crafty tools and using them to create a card. I use some combination of them for almost every card I create. Some have been in my room for years, and others are newer additions, but they're all must-haves in my personal opinion. First up is the Misti. This is just an absolute essential for any stamper. It makes layering stamps and mass producing an absolute breeze, as you can see here. I've lined up several stamps from the Altenew Springtime Azalea set, and I'm inking them with various Altenew inks that I'll link below. Once I've stamped, you'll notice I re-stamp to get more coverage, which is also a godsend with the Misti tool. Then I flip my cardstock around and stamp again. This gives me 2 sets of images with one close of the Misti lid. Imagine doing all of those detail layers with an acrylic block. In the lid of an original Misti, I'm able to do 4 layers without needing to move stamps. Some people recommend stamping in a specific order, but I've never had issues with that, at least not with my favorite inks, those from Altenew, Simon Says Stamp, Hero Arts, Lawn Fawn, or Gina K. Next, I've lined up the fine detail layers of the flowers and leaves in my mini Misti. I love this tool so much that I own 2 originals, a mini and the memory Misti. You'll see later that I actually own one of Ileana's original laser handmade Mistis. Yes, I've been in the Misti fan club that long. Next up on my list of must-haves is Therm purple tape. This was introduced in early 2018 and has been in high demand ever since. It's a low-tack tape that is perfect for a variety of uses. As you can see, I use it to make easy grab handles for my Misti lid and magnets, and I use it for temporarily adhering dies over my stamped images. I also use it to hold watercolor paper to a palette, mask a landscape scene for ink blending or watercoloring, or hold a piece of paper in place temporarily. It does not rip your paper and releases easily, and it's easy to tear into smaller pieces for a variety of uses. You simply must try it. Next is another relative newcomer, the life-changing blender brushes from Picket Studios. I've tried all iterations of blending tools, and these by far are the best. I'll say first off that I do still use my Ranger blending tools when I'm looking for a heavily saturated look, but when I'm looking for something lighter, I'll reach for these every time. They're lightweight and flexible, and those bristles can apply just the lightest touch of color to your paper. I generally rub the bristles into my ink pad and then tap off the excess ink on grid paper. Then I apply it lightly to the paper and build up the color with multiple layers. In this particular instance, my flowers will cover up the spot in the middle, so I didn't worry too much about applying a super soft hand at the beginning. But these brushes are also perfect if you want just a soft hint of color with no sharp edges. And cleanup is a breeze. I just rub the brush on a baby wipe until no more color comes off, and then test it on scrap paper just to be sure. I only have 1 set and change colors frequently with no issues. Next, I trim that panel down and adhere it to a white card base with the help of my next must-have, the grid paper pad from Simon Says Stamp. I work on it almost every time I make a card, unless I'm using something like alcohol inks or watercolors. I use the line frequently to help me align a card base or sentiment on my card panel. It's also great to use for something like ink blending or general coloring. I can test colors or combinations of colors before I use them, right on my work surface. I also use the backs of the paper when I'm coloring so that I can get the most use out of it. Generally, I tear off the top sheet before I start working so I can easily use it to funnel stray embossing powders or embellishments as needed as well. It helps to keep my desk tidy and makes cleanup really easy. I can't recommend it enough. And back to my card. As you can see, I've stamped and die cut a bunch of flowers and leaves and arranged them on my card before adhering them with liquid adhesive. I could have used press and seal to hold the arrangement in place for gluing, but unfortunately I used it all for holiday cooking. After the arrangement is adhered, I stamp my sentiment using CZ Design's EMPHATIC stamp set. As I mentioned earlier, this is my very first Misti. I love that I can now change the colors of the rulers to my favorite teal. I stamp the sentiment on black cardstock with Versamark and heat emboss it with white embossing powder. Finally, my last must-have, the sentiment label dies from Simon Says Stamp. I'm a sucker for a good label die, and these are awesome. The size options are perfect and fit almost every sentiment I have. I also love the option to die cut a fishtail edge. It's hard to use a trimmer to get a perfectly straight label, so these dies are constantly in use in my craft room. I use purple tape to hold them in place and run them through my Gemini Junior. I adhere the large sentiment with foam mounting tape, trim the smaller sentiment into 2 pieces, and adhere those with liquid adhesive. Finally, I finish the card with a few pink blush jewels from Pretty Pink Posh. And that's it. These are definitely the must-haves in my craft room, but I'd love to know your must-have tools. Thanks for joining me today, have an amazing day, and until next time, happy crafting! Bye!